I do believe that it is important for coffee producers to understand a method and a way to evaluate
I agree.
the coffees that they're producing, to make business decisions, to make processing decisions, to make all kinds of decisions that inform that. So I agree, and I not I agree. I completely respect the sentiment that I don't want my coffee reduced to a score. So anybody that would use a cupping form to assess a coffee that would result in a score that would be the period on what the evaluation is, to me, is missing what our industry is really about.
Hmm.
Does that mean that that number still has important and not necessarily the number, but the descriptors, the path that got to that number as being important as how coffee is traded? Absolutely. But I would say that anybody who would just diminish that coffee to just a score is not holding to the values of what our industry is about.
On June 9 and 10 this year, our live online workshop, Biochar for Farming, is happening in English and Spanish with returning specialist professors Angela Barrero and Morillo Bettarello. Tickets are $10 for farmers and $100 for everybody else, which includes 9 pay-it-forward tickets for farmers who can't pay the ticket price. Head to mapitforward.coffee/workshops or check the show notes for links. Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 3 of a very spicy 5-part series. And by spicy, I mean we've got all the opinions that people are sharing in private WhatsApp groups and in private messages on social media, but they're not saying out loud. And we are being the spicy people that are actually saying it out loud. And the reason that we wanted to do this is because it needs to be okay for these conversations to be had openly, and it should have happened before the form even got anywhere near as far as it did. But the reason this, in my opinion, was kept out of the public forum of discussions is because they knew that there was going to be an uproar. And in the next episode, I'm going to reference an article, a direct quote, but I will include a link to the article. It's an article, I've referenced it before in this series, that an interview that Cosimo Lobato, who is the treasurer of the SCA and a board member, Cosimo gave an interview to an Italian coffee media outlet, and he talks about a lot of things. And in that, he makes one thing very clear that needs to be said up front. The CVA is not mandatory. And I want everybody to hear this really, really, really clearly. The SCA is not a government anything. They are acting like a business that is registered as a non-profit, but they are absolutely acting as a business. You do not have to support anything that they're doing. If this doesn't fit you, there is no reason that you have to actually get qualified for the CVA. Or the same thing was for the Q graders. There's nothing that said that you had to be a Q grader. Our industry has survived just fine with not everybody being Q graders. The amount of people that sign their emails off with lapsed Q grader is wild. Okay? You're not going to suddenly not be welcomed into the industry because you're not registered for the CVA. I may no longer be welcomed into the industry after this series or any other SCA event. Who knows? But Tim's putting his hand up there. It's fine. We'll just go for another dinner, Tim. But that's what this situation is. You need to know that while all the marketing material is saying that this is the direction our industry is going in, that's from their opinion. Okay? Be very clear. In the last episode of this series, we're going to be talking specifically about what SCA is offering, like that, and there's no financial arrangement between us. Tim's a friend. When he was in Jakarta seeing all of this stuff unfolding, he's like, this is what I'm thinking of doing. We're going to put together a thing if this is actually what they end up doing. And I'm like, well, listen, man, like, you're such a trusted member of the Q community. If anyone's going to do it, you should be doing it. So that's why he's here. There's no financial arrangement. I don't get anything out of anyone who registers with them or blah, 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 blah. Michael Sheridan is coming on the podcast. If the SCA want to come on the podcast, I want to present the conversation from the perspective of everybody who's involved in this. I would rather be talking to people who are fixing business problems, right? Like, that's the thing that I think what is actually going to make us sustainable as an industry. But this is what's taking up the air in the industry at the moment. And if we are not doing it, nobody else is going to give you the perspectives that you're going to get on the podcast. So in this episode of the series, we're going to be talking about what are the issues with the 2004 cupping form. Tim, we mentioned in the last episode that the complaint that producers have is, I hate that my coffee is reduced down to a score. Mm. Is that the main problem that's wrong? That's the issue with the cupping form, in your opinion?
So I think there's two sides to that sentiment that I think are really important. When I started teaching sensory courses and even before that, when I started working in coffee, it was coffee producers on the border between China and Myanmar, and they were tea producers, and they had started growing coffee. And one of the questions they were asking is, how do I understand the quality? Because they know tea had different qualities and different, grades and so forth. And so naturally, well, isn't coffee like that as well? And so that question of how do I understand the different qualities? How do I evaluate this? Eventually led me to taking some courses, figuring out what is the industry practices of evaluating this? How do I understand? How do I communicate that? And so I do believe that it is important for coffee producers to understand a method and a way to evaluate the coffees that they're producing, to make business decisions, to make processing decisions, to make all kinds of decisions that inform that. So I agree, and I completely respect the sentiment that I don't want my coffee reduced to a score. So anybody that would use a cupping form to assess a coffee that would result in a score that would be the period on what the evaluation is, to me, is missing what our industry is really about. Does that mean that number still has important and not necessarily the number, but the descriptors, the path that got to that number as being important as how coffee is traded? Absolutely. But I would say that anybody who would just diminish that coffee to just a score is not holding to the values of what our industry is about. So how do you evaluate those? How do you contextualize that coffee into a wider understanding of value gain? And that's where a sensorial evaluation is a part of it, but it's one part. There are still other types of values, other types of, there are certain markets where certifications are still important, and, we won't go down that route because I know there's been lots of discussion about those, but there are buying decisions. There are certain values that are espoused by roasters, by importers, by exporters that frame the context around how they buy and sell coffee. So for that producer who had somebody show up at their farm, cup their coffees, or showed up to their lab, cup their coffee, scored it, and that was the end of the conversation, shame on them. Shame on them for doing that. Like, absolutely. That doesn't espouse the industry that I want to, be a part of. And that doesn't espouse the values of what personally I live for. Is a sensorial evaluation and a method to evaluate for making business decisions critical to the buying and selling of coffee for producers and processors? I would argue, yes, absolutely. the question about the 2004 form, the idea that all the 2004 form was about giving a score, to me, missed the values around how educators and people were training and using that form to teach sensory evaluation of coffee. For me, the tool is a tool. It's how I use that tool. It's how I encourage other people to use the tool. It's how we use that tool to get to the place that we need to be and that we desire to be, whether that's, a producer trying to sell coffee, whether that's a roaster trying to buy coffee, whether that's an importer, exporter trading coffee. So the idea that, yes, there were things I think practically about the 2004 form that needed to be adjusted.
Mm-hmm.
This whole, like, just to get into the minutia, the whole idea of taint and fault and how we further deduct defects, I think goes back to a time in coffee trading that's no longer relevant.
Mm-hmm.
It's not needed. A coffee producer that is producing a cup of coffee that has a taint versus a fault, particularly when we call the form a specialty coffee cupping form,
Right.
is not relevant.
Yeah.
It's not relevant. And I can't tell you how much time I've spent talking with producers who are concerned about differentiating between, well, is this a taint and is this fault? I'm like, I'm sorry to tell you, it doesn't matter. Like, if your coffee has a defect, we need to look at what the cause of that was, figure out how we prevent that, because a roaster in a higher value market is not going, they're not going to purchase that, because the desire is a defect-free coffee. So the idea and one of the big knocks that's been for a while on the SCA form is, well, it doesn't evaluate sweetness. It doesn't evaluate sweetness, which I would argue is a misunderstanding of how perceived sweetness in coffee is even understood and evaluated. And there's been some great research by Nancy Cordova, shout out, really wonderful research around perceived sweetness and how we understand that in coffee evaluation. But the point is, it's sure, should sweetness or perceived sweetness be a quality score as opposed to an automatic 10? Yeah, that's probably a really good thing that we should look at, because that's something that our industry values. And for a producer to understand this coffee is a higher perceived sweetness than another coffee, gives it a potentially different value to the end user, to the roaster, to the importer. And so there are certain aspects to the 2004 SCA form that did, in my opinion, need to be adjusted and corrected. But the use of any form to denigrate a coffee to just a score, one, does not espouse the values of the educators that I know that teach sensory courses. And I mean, I would echo a similar sentiment I had when I was running an export company in China, in Yunnan. I had a roaster tell me, we don't buy coffees unless they cup above 84. And I was like just full stop. Like, that's the threshold. Like, I mean, and then you get into questions of alignment and how you're evaluating, and of course, my smart ass self, I'd be like, well, roasted to what level? And, what's your water quality? Because that's going to influence. Because if you're going to go technical like that, know your stuff. If you're going to set that benchmark, know your parameters. You better be really, really sure that if you're going to say, I only buy coffees above 84, you better be really, really confident in how you're achieving that score, and how well your team is calibrated, and how well your equipment's calibrated, and all of that, because that is a calibration issue or calibration discussion.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand that sentiment, but I would still say that a tool that is used to provide a sensory evaluation and supporting producers and processors in sensory evaluation training, to me, is really important and is really critical to support. Because for me, as I entered into coffee evaluation, it was from the standpoint of saying, why is it that the consuming side of the industry holds all the answers? Why is it that they hold all of the power in saying what is good and what is bad? As producers, you should know what it is that you're producing, what the flavor profile, what the quality profile, what it is, and the ability to produce a portfolio of products that allows you to meet different needs within the industry
Mm.
and to market those products to different buyers. One industry, one customer might like something that's more this way, another customer might like something that's more in this respect. I should, as a producer, be able to process and to craft those coffees in a way that serves those that provides opportunities into those different markets. And then I should be able to evaluate and understand what kind of product I have, so I have the information at the bargaining table to have the power, to have more of the power to make those decisions and say, you know what, you're undervaluing my coffee, I know it's better quality, I'm going to go find somewhere else to sell that coffee. And so I agree that there are aspects of the 2004 SCA cupping form that needed to change. I'm not convinced that the CVA and the route they went toward the CVA is the answer and what is solving some of those issues. But I acknowledge that all of them are tools. And what I believe producers and processors and professionals in our industry, individuals that are getting into coffee, that are working in quality control labs, that want to begin a career in what I think is a really exciting industry. Yes, it has issues, and yes, it has challenges, and yes, we're facing things, but I have grown to really respect the community, the coffee community, the coffee industry that we have, uh, for the people that are in it. Not all people. I've met some people that I wish would maybe
Word.
leave, but no, I've also met some wonderful people and amazing people, um, and and so I would say that the need for sensory education around understanding how we evaluate and how we do that is still relevant and
Mm.
important. And there are different tools that we can use to do that, but the idea that it is all centered around just the CVA, to me, is misplaced and not the direction of where I see the industry going.
Here's a question that has hit me for the first time during this conversation. Instead of evolving the queue, why not evolve the 2024 cupping form? Is it
The
because
2004,
the
I,
2004, sorry. Go ahead.
I honestly, I think from what as best as I understand, I think that the SCA views the CVA as the proper evolution of the 2004 SCA form. I think they view, and I don't want to speak for them, so if anybody from SCA does jump on and or does, accept your invitation, is able to speak to this, but from what I've heard and from what I've heard communicated, I believe that the SCA does see the CVA form as the the 2.0 evolution of the 2004 SCA cupping form. And they've gone, in their opinion, from what they've shared, they've gone through, the research, the sensory science aspect, beta testing. I believe that they honestly feel like they've confirmed that enough with the industry to say that it's the next evolution or the evolution of the 2004 form. I don't see that. I don't see that reflected in reality. I think they themselves would
Mm.
say, we've done our due diligence, we feel this is what the industry needs. I don't see that reflected in, the number of people that have come to me and that I've had conversation with that have said, this isn't practical, this isn't something we can actually use, I have to have a rubric now to
Mm.
convert, because there's still a way of saying, like, this, the way that I use this form still gets me a score. Like, there's still,
Mm.
the SCA clearly acknowledges that somehow something needs to be produced from that, because it's still a part of how coffee is traded. It's just not the 2004 form, it's now the CVA form. So, and yes, it does go beyond that. It does look at extrinsic factors and still has a physical assessment of the coffee, the green coffee. It has this affective and descriptive form. So there's 4 different aspects to the CVA form. But I honestly believe that they think it's the evolution, but I believe it's disjointed from the reality of where the industry is, in its use throughout the entire supply chain. Is it the evolution for one part of our industry or one aspect of the industry, one component of the supply chain, sure, maybe it is. But for the entire industry as a whole, and then to somehow give the idea that now all of the industry needs to get behind and use the CVA form because it's the new standard and it's the new way that coffee is going to be evaluated, I disagree, wholeheartedly disagree. And I think it's misplaced.
I if I understand it correctly, the CVA is an evolution of the 2004 cupping form, and they are taking the mailing list of the CQI to make sure that the people who were Q graders and learning how to get qualified as Q graders are now pushers for the CVA.
Correct. I think that's a fair statement. So when when the when the announcement was made that SCA is taking over the Q grader Q program, um, they were very clear in providing a pathway,
Mm.
a in their mind very easy pathway for current and lapsed Q graders to become certified under the CVA Cupper program. CVA Cupper course, CVA for Cuppers course, I think is what they call it.
Okay.
And it's a 2-day program. It's a 2-day program. And there was a lot of question about, well, why lapsed Q graders? Like, that was one question that people had. And SCA's answer was, well, because through the Q grader program, they learned how to cup, and that's all you need to know for using the CVA is how to cup. It's not about being calibrated or aligned or whatever terminology CQI uses for their ongoing upkeep of their program. But all you needed to learn was how to cup. And since a lapsed Q grader knows how to cup, like literally how the process of cupping works, they can then take a CVA for cuppers course and become CVA, become
Qualified.
certified, like extend their license, qualified under the CVA program. So, and again, going back to your point, all of that back end like work on the website and like going in and adding your Q grader certificate as part of that all of that was done before Expo. So like
Mm.
again, I'm not a web designer. I'm not like I know enough about video editing to really get myself in trouble. I've done a little bit of design work. I know that doesn't happen overnight. And so or
Weeks,
even
folks,
in a
weeks,
week. So
weeks.
I like that was already that was because why I know that is because after the first day when that announcement was made. So so there were a couple of different fast track processes that people had. One was if you're a current or lapsed Q grader, you can take a CVA for Cuppers course and become certified as a evolved Q, EQ, I guess is what it's loosely being thrown around in on social media world, as an evolved Q under that program. And so you could take the 2-day course. There's if you are an SCA AST that's approved to teach that course, you could offer that course, take that course, and now you're evolved Q. There was also a pathway for people who were SCA ASTs, so they're I think it's authorized service trainer, or
Hmm.
authorized, I don't know I never really knew what the S stood for, but anyways, they are authorized trainers for the SCA in the sensory program, and you're a Q grader. You could go online and apply to be an evolved Q instructor. Now, SCA has announced that there's going to be a course coming over the next couple of months, like a webinar or something that you have to attend that I guess will teach you what this new course is going to entail. Because here's where there's been a little bit of confusion, I think. If you take that 2-day, if you are a current Q grader and you take that 2-day course, you then become new evolved Q. But if you are, and I hate it, like
Oh, me
there's a part
too.
of my soul that cringes every time I say it.
Can't believe
When
it's coming out of your mouth when you say it. It's just
I
so
know, I
rotten.
know, I know. So, but if you are, let's say you took a curator course, but you didn't pass all the exams, like you're still in the process
Hmm.
of getting your Q certificate, or maybe you were saving up to take the course or whatever. If you're not there yet by October 1st or September 30th, one of the two. SCA has said that they are announcing there is coming a 6-day CVA course. It's made of 2 components, a 4-day sensory course and a 2-day physical evaluation course. That will be the new course for certifying individuals in this CVA for Cuppers program. And that's what in the first episode, I was talking about the licensed coffee evaluator and coffee evaluator program trademark that I found was submitted in early April by SCA. Randomly found that on the US trademark website. I suspect, and again, I don't know this for a fact, but I think either SCA had planned from the beginning to launch at SCA the coffee evaluator program or licensed coffee evaluator, this program that was going to compete with CQI's Q grader program, or either that and or they will phase out calling it the Q once people they capture that group of people, and they will rebrand it as the coffee evaluator program or licensed coffee evaluator. I don't know. I have no clue. And look, I mean, people submit trademark things all the time, so who knows if that's even, what. It was actually kind of interesting. I went down a
That would
deep
have been
web of digging
fascinating.
through the US trademark website. Oh, they registered that. Oh, I know that person. Oh, that was interesting. So who knows if it's actually going to be that. But what was communicated to us by Michael and by Giannis at Expo was that SCA was launching their CVA Cupper certification program, and they made that announcement months ago. I started seeing some things about SCA, launching a certifying cuppers to use the CVA, method, or to evaluate using the CVA form. So I don't know if that's what they were planning on calling it, if they still intend to. I don't know, but it's the confusing part is, I think, for current Q graders, one, it's like who do I align with? Do I go to the SCA? Do I not? Do I and what's the process of that? So I know a lot of, and myself included, I know a lot of CQI current Q quality evaluated instructors who are saying, look, I have learners who have come to my courses over the span of the last 6 months or even longer that they need 2 exams to complete this certification. If they don't finish these 2 exams in the next couple of months, they now have to then take a 6-day course if they want to continue this. And look, I acknowledge you said something, and I think it was well stated. You don't have to have a Q grader certificate to know how to evaluate coffee. You don't. You don't. And you can be, I mean, I've cupped with amazing cuppers in producing countries that have never sniffed the classroom of a CQI course or an SCA course. And I highly respect those individuals for the skill that they have and the contribution they make in the industry. So I completely agree with you. There are individuals that want that certification, and there are certain markets around the world where they want that certification in order to get a better job, to increase their salary within their current job. It is a pathway to self-improvement, self-development, professional development. And so I respect both of those sides. Those individuals
100%.
who want to pursue that, and I don't think you, I know you don't.
I absolutely respect
before.
anybody. Again, back to dinner. We talked about that all the time.
We're aligned on that.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. So agreed. You don't have to say, well, the only option now is for me to be a CVA for Cupper certified, or I don't even know, EQ. I don't know what it's going to be called, but you don't have, that's not the only option. And I think in future episode, we'll talk about Sustainable Coffee Institute, SCI, what we're looking at and what we're, what some of our plans are. You also don't have to be certified through SCI, through SCA, through CQI. There's other, and as I've been doing a lot more, there are other entities out there and organizations out there that are doing training that I think provide valuable tools for people. We want to be, and as long as I'm a part of whatever I'm a part of in the coffee industry, I want to be about investing in people and helping them achieve the goals that they're wanting to achieve. And if that is a certification that allows them to do that, to increase their revenue, increase their veracity in the industry or their position, gives them the confidence they need to pursue certain goals, I'm all for it.
Mm,
If you don't need a certification, but you want training, you want support, you want this, let's do it. Like
mm.
I think this idea that now I have to, and 10,000 Q graders, globally transitioning to the CVA is now one. I would be very interested to know the specific numbers on the representation of that number within global producing countries. I know you'll have a lot in certain producing countries where those courses have been more accessible. But if we look at the globe of all producing countries, I'd be willing to bet a significant amount of money that there is a vast, vast void of that number from a large number of producing countries, a
Mm.
significant number of producing countries. And so the idea that if we can get 10,000 Q graders now CVA for cuppers, now we've got a lot of producers on board and we've got, good representation from across the supply chain, I think is not a proper logical leap. And I think that it's in fact, I would say it's incorrect, full stop. And
Mm.
so I really do respect that there are individuals in our industry that want that certification and are trying to figure out, look, I just invested thousands of dollars in traveling to attend a course. I didn't pass all my exams. What do I do? And I know that there's been a lot of discussion among the Q grader instructors saying, look, what CQI did, the distrust, the like absolute,
Betrayal,
and
man.
I betrayal. Thank you. I will give CQI credit. They've said, look, we're going to, normally when somebody comes and takes a retake, CQI charges a royalty for that person when they're attending
Hmm.
that course. They've said, look, we're waiving royalty fees for retakers, which I thought was good. I respect that decision,
It's
so I
the
want to give
least they
credit for
can
that.
do.
100%, 100%. But I respect that they actually did that because there's been other times we've pushed back on things and there's been a lot of resistance to it. So I'll give them
Mm.
credit for that. But as instructors, we've said, look, let's try as much as we can to get as many people as we can to at least finish that pathway that they did, whatever we need to do to make it happen. Even though I know I'm going out of business because I've lost this opportunity to teach these courses, like they're still committed to, because the people that come, and I feel confident saying this. I would say that the vast majority of instructors within the CQI community of instructors, they genuinely and passionately care about the people that come and take their courses. During a 6-day course, during a 3-day course, you get to know people, you get to know who they are, you get to know their families, you get to know their stories. And there is genuinely a respect and an admiration and a compassion for people and
Mm.
love for people that come and put themselves in a position that, as an adult learning is always tough because you're putting yourself in a position of vulnerability,
Yep.
and there's always difficulties with that. And I know, for me, and I know several other instructors, we don't take that lightly
No.
at all. And we consider it an extreme honor to come alongside of people and to journey with them through that educational process. And that's why I just a small thing about me, I always have a hard time calling people who come to my courses my student, my student, my
Yeah,
student. Because to
that doesn't
me,
surprise
it's
me.
like for me, it's you're a learner. You're a participant in the course, you're a learner, because it's not a hierarchical system. I
Mm.
tell people the first day of any course I teach, the thing that I love about traveling around the world as teaching is I get the opportunity to learn from you.
Mm.
And I do. And I don't say that because it's like, oh, like just something I say.
Cute to
I
say.
really do. I
Yeah.
always learn way more than I feel like I get to share. And so to me, we're learners together. It's not, and I'm not trying to downgrade people who call individuals or students or say, oh, that's my student or that was a student of mine. There's no disrespect. Meaning, I just have always struggled with that word because it's, to me, we're in this journey together. We're learning
Mm.
together. And I get an amazing opportunity to share some information that I've gained from traveling around the world, from putting from the opportunities that I've been given to be in those positions. And I feel the only way to properly represent that and to be respectful to that is to share that with as many people as I can and in many contexts as I can. And that's how I approach education. That's how I produce courses. And I know there's many other instructors around the world that share similar feelings as well.
Folks, I want to give you some transparency into something. When Tim and I were talking about doing this series, he said to me, I don't know if I've got enough to talk about for 5 episodes.
And then I opened my mouth.
No. Well, we're 33 minutes into the 3rd episode. Join us for the next episode, folks, for this amazing conversation. Where in the next episode, we're going to talk about why are people so polarized by this decision. Clearly, that's going to need a whole 2-hour conversation on its own. So join us for the next episode. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day.
I really hope you enjoyed this episode, friends. Please don't forget to show us some love by subscribing, liking, commenting, and most of all, sharing this podcast with your friends. Check the show notes for links, including our sponsors and our Patreon. And stay tuned for more great conversations on the Daily Coffee Pro by Mapper Forward.